Welcome everybody. If you're new, I'm new to this YouTube endeavor myself. If you happen to be one of the people that watched my first video, that actually watched it, which I think there's 0 views actually, to be quite honest. I'm brutally honest. So I'm a realist. I've always been like a more of a I would consider myself a realist versus an optimist or a pessimist, because for the longest time I thought I was a pessimist, and I'm not a pessimist. I thoroughly am not somebody that dwells on negative. Sometimes maybe the things that I think as a realist comes off as negative because it's the reality of things, and a lot of the things in today's world is really it's not the ideal situation, the type of world we're living in. But anyways, let me get off that and get on to the topic that I want to discuss today. I was just thinking about just starting this YouTube channel off with just talking about like the current events, just in the world and in YouTube land, just in general, the one thing that comes to mind first is, I know a lot of people like to steer away from this area, is just because it's just it has a negative, just a negative, like impact on people, and that's politics, It's just pretty interesting. I guess they said that this is the first time in 100 years that the person who wants to be the Speaker of the House, of the House of Representatives, has been unsuccessful. And it's not just 1 or 2 rounds of voting. I think it came down to like the 15th round of voting before they finally, the people that were resisting caved in and gave in to Kevin McCarthy, or Representative Kevin McCarthy. I'm not, like I said before, I don't know if you heard my first video. I wouldn't consider myself wholly like a Democrat or Republican or left or right or liberal or conservative. I've taken surveys in my collegiate classes before, and they say people aren't really one way or the other. There might be a few, like maybe out of 100%, there might be like 10% that might be full blown right, and 10% that might be full blown liberal. But for the most part, I think people are very I think centrist when they think about things. I think a lot of times people get wrapped up in what's popular and what's trendy. I think that's why a lot of people got caught up in the Trump wave when it came through, because they liked the ideal of it at the time. Even if they didn't really fully know what that was, And in 2016, I abstained my vote. Because I did exercise my right to vote by abstaining my vote, and I know a lot of people might say that's a waste of a vote. I believe that this country needs change. I think the powers that be, they want us to think that there's only a Democrat and Republican choice, and technically there is at this point in time. But I think if we were to change that landscape and make it more ideal for the people that actually live in this country, I think the best thing would be to start voting for independents instead of Republican or Democrat if you really don't like what they stand for. Start advocating for some law changes. Because at the end of the day, whether they're Republican or Democrat or Republican, they're really just buddies at the end of the day, working for their own agenda. There's no laws in place that hold the lawmakers accountable. There's a whole bunch of laws for businesses and individuals and whatnot, but there's not really that much laws that hold those people accountable. I go as far as to say, like, even During the last days of President Trump's presidency, how he, I'm gonna go as far as to say like he incited it, but he did encourage that protest to happen on January 6th. So there's no way to hold that act accountable. I mean, I was in the military myself, and from my point of view, that's insurrection. That's treason, in inciting a mob to pretty much topple the government. That's what I would consider that at least. I know there's people that are hard leaning, pro Trump people that will vehemently disagree with me, and that's their fair choice, But I mean, I'm talking from like an unbiased perspective. I'm just speaking from somebody who lives in this country, and just from what I observed, on my end of the spectrum. Uh, I know I'm just one person, but I feel like conversations like this need to be had, should be had. I don't know why people are so inclined to be divisionists nowadays, or just would rather draw their line in the sand and be like, you know what, I there's no compromise nowadays. There's no genuine conversations. It's just people just sitting there waiting for the other person to finish talking and didn't even pay attention to what they said, and they're gonna stick to their guns. And I used to be like that a little bit when I was younger. As I gotten older, I've tried to steer away from that. I know I still tend to do that at times, maybe when it comes to specific circumstances that I feel strongly about, but not to the point where I won't sit there and listen to somebody if they have a valid, logical point that they're making. Not if they're gonna go off of their religious beliefs, or if they're gonna go off of what they believe in just because they believe in that's what they believe in, and there's no really actual reason or rhyme to it. Uh, I think like another thing when it comes to like politics is, don't get me wrong, we have a beautiful historical document in the Constitution, but I don't think a lot of people know that our Constitution, I think if it's not the oldest Constitution in the world, it's one of the oldest constitutions in the world. And I think with everything else in the world where things get updated with time and change, I'm not saying to totally disregard everything that the Constitution stood for. What I'm saying is there needs to be an upgrade to the Constitution that we have. There needs to be a new one to bring it up to date. We're living off of a document that was based on the late 1700s, which is, I mean, the world has changed within the last 100 years, let alone a document that was made 250 years ago. Right around 250 years ago. It should have been, our Constitution should have been, I think, modified sometime in this last century in the 1900s. I mean, if anything, it should have been, I think, the best opportune time that our Constitution should have been updated or modified or replaced. If you want to use whatever verbiage you want to plug in there, was during the Great Depression. I think that event was such a singular turning point in the world where I feel like it should have been updated. And I think the Constitution should be updated every so often. Computers get replaced. I mean, we started off with 0G, 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G. Now we're at 5G. And I mean, 6G is going to be just around the corner. So with every other advancement, I think legislation should be advanced in the same manner. You know what I mean? Like, I think that argument's like, oh, it's tradition, you shouldn't change it. And, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it needs to be updated to include the changes that have happened. Back when the Constitution was made in the late 1700s, I mean, anybody who was not Caucasian was viewed as a lesser human being. I mean, slaves were viewed, African Americans or Africans at that time were viewed as 3/5 of a person. I mean, I mean, nobody like thinks that that needs to be updated or replaced or just revised or something. And there's a lot more pieces to that paper, to that document that needs to be revised. But that's probably uh, the single most controversial probably portion of that legislation. Um, I just feel like it should be revised. Sorry, I have a COVID cough. I don't have COVID anymore, but ever since I did, I've been having real bad coughs. Um, I just feel like that legislation needs to be replaced. It's so outdated, when you look at everything else that's been updated. We're not cranking our cars anymore. I mean, we have fully electric vehicles, for crying out loud now. We're not flying in planes with rotors. We're flying in planes that have freaking, jet powered engines that could break the sound barrier, like it needs to be replaced, it needs to be updated just like everything else in the world. Uh, you know, just it's just interesting politics in general, and I see like I studied a lot of history, and I know that the people that live on the coastline tend to be more liberal, more forward thinking. A lot of people in the inland or in the, not on living on the coast tend to have more of a traditionalist point of view, and that goes back to like when I was studying like ancient Greece, like Sparta and Athens. Athens was more of a liberal, forward-thinking, democratic republic, based on those principles at least. And Spartan was more, a warrior, king. Every citizen, has to carry their weight type of, traditional background. And those two ideologies have always clashed even since then. Back then, Sparta eventually conquered Athens. If you're not keen on history, and the rest is history. I think Greece kind of, I felt declined at that point. Um, and it's like that in today's world. I feel like most of the like democratic leaning states are on the coastlines, on the west coast of the east coast, on like the northeast, all throughout the Pacific coastline. All three states are more left leaning, and and then there's a few scattered states. I think the more populated states are more probably democratic. Like you got Illinois, and well, I know Ohio and Michigan seem to go back and forth a lot. And the one oddball out of everything's Florida, but I don't even want to touch on Florida because I feel like that's kind of it's just an odd state. It's like Oz or Wonderland. It's its own realm. I'm not even gonna speak down on it because I mean it might be pretty interesting to live there and see maybe what is really going on here. But I think the only other states where it's like they're not coastline states, but they lean left is probably like some of the southwestern states. Like I know Arizona, Nevada, Colorado kind of lean a little more left than the rest of the inland states. And I think that's because the population is bigger, and that I feel like they have a more of a stronger minority presence in those areas. I think. I think even like you're seeing like the change even in Texas. I won't say it's full blown change yet, but I'm starting to see like more um, Democratic elected politicians coming out of that state. And I mean, me being from California, people are going to be like, it's California and California bringing their politics. I think it's just the younger generation. I think they're more educated. I think they're more in tune with the world. I think that they're not held back by some of the old ideology that I think the people in their mid 30s and older have. It's really inspiring, in my opinion. When a generation can initiate change. And I don't think there's really been too many generations that you could sit here and say that generation initiated change. I think like maybe the greatest generation during World War II, and like maybe like the baby boomers, and I'm kind of thinking Generation X, but not really. They didn't. I don't know if you could sit here and say that their changes that they initiated were like for the overall benefit of the world, other than versus the world just being a funner place to live in. But I mean, who knows? Maybe people would include Generation X in that group. But for sure, I think like the greatest generation is one of those. I mean, the millennial generation is bringing some big changes, and even, don't get me wrong, some of them I was kind of like I'm outdated because I'm just not used to those kind of I'm not used to that, a lot of those changes. I'm not saying that I'm against it. I want to be educated and up to date on it. I'll still probably kind of be a little boggled on things, but I'm not gonna be ignorant to the point in which I'm gonna put them down for their beliefs. One thing that one class that I took during, not this summer but last summer, 2021, I want to say, was a sociology of gender, and that one really expanded my my viewpoint on things. And if teach its own, I feel like if people feel the way they feel, that's fine. I feel like the only thing that kind of gets me kind of a little kind of scared, or not scared, but because that seems kind of an unenlightened word to use. I feel like if I'm more hesitant on like possible situations happen where somebody that was initially like one gender changed to another gender, and there could possibly be like some sort of sexual assault that can occur in a restroom because they're going into a different restroom now. Because I mean, even though I'm not saying everybody who does that is a criminal, but there's criminals in all demographics, and who's to say that there's not somebody who has a criminal intent that has went from I mean, specifically a specific example would be like somebody who was initially a guy that's transitioning to a female. They go into a female's restroom, and let's say they do assault, because themselves specifically, not everybody who transitions from male to female, but this particular person does have a criminal mentality, and they do something like that in that restroom. What rights do the people that are anti like LGBTQ, or the ones specifically against the people that do transition? Do the other people that are against that have rights? I mean, would that be a good legal standpoint? I don't know. I'm just thinking of situations that can occur. And the only other thing that I get concerned about is people that were, again, a specific example is like somebody who was a male born a male but transitioned into a female. And yes, they might have the hormones that are equivalent to like a female, like the traditional females, blood hormones, but their skeletal structure and their muscular development on their body is always going to be pretty much, I feel, at that point, naturally stronger than somebody who was born as a female. And who's to say that that's fair when it comes to sports? If somebody who you could obviously tell that their skeletal structure is way more stronger, to play against somebody who natural born female, But I mean, I went kind of into that realm of politics. I was just wanting to talk about politics in general. I mean, it's just you know, something I've been thinking about a lot, and I thought it would be a good I mean, I might take my words back now, but I thought it would be a good subject to start this YouTube channel with, to get the creative thinking juices flowing, right out the gate. I just want to hear the responses out there, and I just want to say I don't mean to offend anybody. I don't feel like a particular way. It's just like the two examples I gave, or like anything else that's talked about politics. It's just situations that I've thought about. You know what I mean? As just a human being living in this country. But yeah, I look forward to this YouTube channel and seeing you guys' responses. Peace out.